And we're back on Outside the Book with Jennifer Bradbury. Jennifer is a Kentucky native. She's from Owensboro. She's a Western Kentucky University graduate. She had one of the most intriguing honeymoons I've encountered. She bicycled from Charleston, South Carolina to Los Angeles, California, featuring 50 flat tires along the way. Her first book, Shift, was picked as an ALA Best Book for Young Adults, and her new book, Wrapped, will be released next month. So Jennifer, thanks for being with us on Outside the Book.
Me. I'm really excited to be here.
What got you started writing young adult fiction?
Well, I wasn't going to be a writer. I actually came to Western as a journalism major, so I was thinking about writing that way. But I switched into English because I fell in love with my English classes at Western, and then got a teaching credential along the way. And then when I was teaching high school English in Washington, where we live now, I didn't have a lot of books I could give to my students to read. I hadn't read much young adult lit. So what happened was I read about 300 novels over the course of my first year of teaching. Yeah.
So about a novel a day.
Pretty much. So I could basically chase those kids around the library and say, read this one, it's perfect for you. And kind of along the way, I just fell in love with these stories and the variety of young adult lit, and just, it looked like so much fun, I just wanted to try it. And that's kind of where it started.
What gave you the idea that you, as a young woman, could write successfully about two teenage boys taking a bicycle trip?
You know, I actually didn't have that idea. I was terrified because I'd written 2 books that will never be published. I kind of learned to write books from writing those 2 things. And when I was preparing to write Shift, and I was thinking I had this great idea for the story and everything else, I was really debating, like, can I write for guys? Can I write 2 boys' voices? And it really came down to the way they were going to communicate, and I said, I have to try it, and it just worked out really well. One of the best compliments I got was my brother-in-law. When he read a draft of it, he said, I always knew you'd make a great guy, which was, you know, sort of off-putting at first, but then I kind of liked what he said. I understood what he was saying. And I think it just was a product of having been, you know, an observer of the guys in my classes when I was teaching, and I worked at a boys' camp in North Carolina for 5 summers, and my husband always joked that they sort of forgot that I was a girl after a while. Like, I was like that lady in the forest with the gorillas, and they started eating things out of her hair. And I just got to listen and kind of absorb those voices, and I think that helped me with writing Shift.
Do you ever share any of your manuscripts with your students?
I do. The first 2 books I wrote, I read portions of aloud to my students in my classes, my 9th grade writing classes, because Dr. Lenore and Dr. Flynn and Dr. Hageman all drilled into me how important it was to share your own writing with your students if you really want them to write well and write with commitment. And I got amazing feedback from my kids, even on just partial pieces. And I mentioned those kids in the acknowledgments in my first book, because they taught me tons.
It's a big shift from Shift to Wrapped.
Yes, it is.
Give us a quick introduction to Wrapped, since it hasn't been released yet.
Wrapped it's a historical fiction novel for youth, and it opens at a mummy unwrapping party, kind of in the summer of Waterloo in London.
1815.
1815. Yeah, good job. You took your history, and I'm very excited about it. It's kind of a book. My husband describes it as Jane Austen meets Alias meets Indiana Jones. And I love it. It's a lot of fun. It's an adventure story and a spy story, kind of, but sort of couched in Regency England, which is a period that I've always been fascinated with. So at this mummy unwrapping party, she finds something she's not supposed to, and the story just kind of snowballs from there.
Why do you think ancient Egypt has such a hold on American popular culture? Whether it's the mummy films of the 30s, more recent mummy films, your book is another example.
Yeah.
What's the hook there?
I don't know. You know, there's another author here whose book I'm dying to read, who writes about ancient Egypt as well. As a kid, I was fascinated with that period. My sisters and I it was right up there with Star Wars for us in a lot of ways. And I don't know, I think it's just the mystery of a culture that left so much behind, but yet we still know we just don't know what the day-to-day was like for those people. And I don't know, I think it's just the mystery of it and the fascination of, you know, the macabre, certainly, of mummification and the tombs and all those pieces. But I don't know, I love it. Apparently other people do too. So
You've had a Fulbright to India.
I did.
Has that translated into your writing yet?
It has. I actually wrote the first draft of Shift while I was living in India. And some characters in there I borrowed from some of the students I was working with while I was there. And I actually, when I was living in India, it was really interesting because people of a certain age, you know, like when I did a semester abroad with Pat Taylor when I was at Western, and who I adore, and was very sad to hear about her passing. But I remember I'd go to a park and to read or study, and I'd sit down to some old man on a bench, and eventually he got around to talking about where he was during the Great War and the Blitz, and just how present that period was in history still for the people of England. But in India, there was kind of an analog to that in the partition, in the area of India where I was living. So the principal had stories about her experience during partition, and kids would tell stories about their parents, and their experiences during partition, and I just started turning up something else. And so that novel will be out next summer. It's another piece of historical fiction set in 1947, right on the eve of the split between Pakistan and India. So.
Jennifer Bradbury, it sounds like an interesting list of books, and rap sounds intriguing. The India book sounds particularly intriguing.
Thank you.
Good luck with a really flourishing career.
Thank you so much.
On Outside the Book, this is David Lee for Western Kentucky University, and our guest has been Jennifer Bradbury, the author of Shipped and Wrapped.